Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ed DeVoe, president of the New Jersey Cannabis Association. We are the state's first and largest trade association for the cannabis industry. We are your Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to another segment of Lunch and Learn, where you hear from industry experts on factors that may help your businesses just exceed in the cannabis space in New Jersey. The first thing before we get to our two guests is I'd like to thank our sponsors. Our sponsors are Proteus 420, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Saks LLP, Burton Trent Public Affairs, Curaleaf, Garden State Green Energy, Dutchie, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, Sprague Energy, our preferred energy partner, and the Sheet Metal Workers, Local 19. Also, by way of housekeeping, I want to bring to your attention our upcoming networking events. I'm going to first talk about our immediate for the month of February. February 28th, we will be in Voorhees, New Jersey at the law firm of Archer Law. That is Tuesday, February 28th, 5:30 to 8:30. We are going to actually celebrate lifting the cap. So for you cultivators, you'll know what that means. And we would love to have you with us on February 28th, 5:30 to 8:30 in Voorhees. Also, I want to mention a larger event, April 12th. Please mark your calendars for April 12th. This will be a larger, more than networking event. Getting your license, now what? We are going to present to you on this occasion panel discussions on what you need to do to get your business going. This is going to be, again, it's more than just networking. This is hearing from industry experts, not just from New Jersey, but nationally. They're going to come share with you on how to get your cannabis business up and running in New Jersey. So with that, I want to welcome two industry experts. I want to welcome Matt Tharp from FlowHub, and I want to welcome Lucas McCann from Can Delta. So Matt, let's begin with you. If you take a moment, introduce yourself and tell us about FlowHub.
Thanks, Edmund. Happy to be here and looking forward to all the questions and participation from the audience there in New Jersey. So I am VP of product for FlowHub. FlowHub is a compliant point of sale system. We are in all of the metric states. So we're very, we're very familiar with metric. We've actually been working with metric since before it was metric. Our CEO and founder, Kyle Sherman, was actually partly, was a part of the group that advocated to get an API from metric in the first place, so that what we could do is build a compliant point of sale system that actually tries to automate and make using and working with metric something that's a lot easier on retailers and reduce redundant steps. And so our point of sale helps retailers in the cannabis space deal with everything that you have to deal with, which is plenty. Helps you keep track of customer data, helps you keep track of product and inventory data, of course, run the front, the cashier experience, the bud tender experience, and sort of all the analytics and metric requirement management that you have to do just to stay compliant and stay in business every day. So we're really happy to be a part of the industry. We're significant advocates in the space. We're not just selling software. We really believe in the market, and I think it's something that's been unique about FlowHub since the first time I met folks here was just that this was a mission more than it was simply a business opportunity. And so we really try to stay very close to our customers in every market and really understand ways that we can make their retail experience better for them and their customers. So happy to be here and hope I can be helpful today.
Well, that's great, Matt. In fact, you mentioned something interesting here, and as I was speaking with you in the pregame, we were talking about the fact that many of our viewers are, in fact, either applicants or newly awarded licensees, and we also have some ancillary businesses here. You just mentioned something that I really appreciate, and that is the fact that you have FlowHub, you've got a product, you provide a service, but you're not static, right? Or nor stagnant, that you're
Right.
constantly changing. So if you could tell us about some of those changes, some of the changes that maybe you started in another state, and now that we're evolving, and now you've got New Jersey as part of your bandwidth, what are some of those changes that you found that you've had to make that actually makes FlowHub more user-friendly or customer-friendly?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So because we've been in the space 8 years now, we've had the opportunity to see how cannabis retail has developed over the years and how it's had to change from, when it became available in Colorado and then kind of each state from there. What it gives us an opportunity to do is to see all of the, all of the ways that different retailers configure their business, the different, how they have to operate within different state boundaries and different state guidelines to sometimes do something that's the same process, the same feature or the same behavior in a different state that's regulated completely differently. And so being able to see all the various patterns that have emerged and how they've changed over the years, one of the things that we've taken very seriously at FlowHub is building the system in such a way that our customers, the retailers, don't have to be afraid of metric or the state making a change, rolling it out, maybe not even getting a vote until the last minute, and then it happens and it's possible. It's like, okay, great, you can do something like consumption lounges starting today. How do I do that? We are now very agile. The system is capable of changing very quickly. And so it allows us to make sure that we're staying up with regulations and compliance changes, because we all know they happen regularly. And you want to make sure as a retailer that you're not put in a bind or in a tough position because your state has changed something and now you're waiting for your software partners to catch up. And so, this is something that honestly 8 years ago, I don't think was as big of a concern. It wasn't something we were actively thinking about. 8 years later, it's 100% built into the product, because we've got to make sure that this doesn't create problems for retailers. And so I think that's, it is always changing. Just about the time you get used to operating the way you do, it's going to change. And so we've got to make sure our systems can help accommodate that and make that as pain-free as possible.
Thank you so much for that, Matt. In fact, I think I'm going to use this as the point to segue to Lucas, because when we talk about change, and I think that that's something that CanDelta is part of monitoring and helping their customers, their constituents with. So Lucas, with that, you want to introduce yourself and what you do with CanDelta and who CanDelta is?
Sure. Thanks for the talking stick, Edmund. Appreciate it. I think, really discuss a lot of very sunny news for what we have in New Jersey on a very rainy Friday afternoon in Manhattan. So a lot of great things are happening in the space, and happy to touch on those. For those that don't know who CanDelta is, we are a regulatory and scientific cannabis-focused consulting company. So what that means is we help small businesses become effectively sustainable, successful, and to get all the licenses and permits that they'll need to operate and be able to make their first buck. So by and large, we are small business consultants that focus in on the cannabis controlled substances spaces. And we've helped launch about 300 businesses, not just in New Jersey, but across the US. We're very focused in New York and very excited about New York as well as New Jersey, and also internationally as well. We've even written some regulations for some countries that they've used to adopt as part of their cannabis frameworks. So we've seen a lot as a result of seeing a lot of these lessons learned. The folks that we work with, we try very much to bestow that information, that experience, and that wisdom to those that are looking to get into the business. Now, it's exciting for a lot of people. It's new. A lot of people coming into cannabis don't necessarily have legal, regulatory cannabis knowledge, which is exciting, but also the industry itself is new. So not only are you challenged if you're coming into the industry with the fact that you're probably coming in with less experience working in a legal framework, but also the fact that the goalposts tend to move quite a bit, especially in the first few years before things kind of stabilize and really start to trend off to something that we can be labeling it as a little bit more predictable. Having said that, moving through a lot of these emerging markets, we try and guard the folks, or arm the folks, I should say, that we're working with a lot of the trends that we've seen across other states, and they tend to kind of follow a very similar pattern. There's a lot of patterns in how these businesses sort of begin. At the beginning of the process of legalization and regulation, we see that classically there'll be a very slow, like molasses, onset of licenses that are being issued, and New Jersey, I think, is a great testament to that. In fact, I think New Jersey is one of the slowest rollouts I've seen. But having said that, there's a lot of pluses with that too. Everyone is getting very comfortable with this. We're not getting into a situation where we're having too many businesses too quickly, and we've seen that happen, and how that can affect industries, and that can also be scary and potentially pretty bad for industry. Despite the fact that New Jersey is moving very slowly, the CRC, I think, is extremely committed to their mission. At least they announce how proud they are. They're always giving each other a lot of pats on the back during the meetings, which is great. But their optimism, I think, is met with the fact that there are a lot of challenges in this space, considering how much control municipalities have in this process. And I think that's going to be an underlying theme in today's conversation, is just highlighting how much control municipalities have, and the challenge of sort of surmounting that, and how folks that have really established themselves in these communities in which they're applying will really, I think, set them up for success, because they'll really need to leverage their networks, their friends, their family, and their communities to be able to seek these approvals that they're looking for, and hopefully sway some opinions. So a lot about the industry there. My background is in synthetic organic chemistry. I had no idea that I wanted to be a cannabis consultant growing up. It just so happens that I fell into that. I did work for the federal government for about a year. Found that was really great for learning how the government works and how to communicate with them. And New Jersey being one of those states where it's a very regulated framework, it's unfortunately for most people applying, not a very easy application process to be able to get in. And as a result of that, you have to be very good at government speak. As a result of that, folks such as myself have had, I say, a pretty popular following, because there's a lot of room for interpretation. And again, things are changing very, very quickly. So we do a lot of knowledge broadcasts. We have channels on YouTube where we're explaining about these changes, and really hoping to diffuse a lot of that information to everyone out here today. We've got 3 offices if you'd ever like to visit. We're in Hackensack, we're in Tribeca, and we've got an office in Canada, in Toronto as well. And very excited to be able to shed some experience and some best practices about moving into this new but very, very exciting industry.
Excellent. You touched on some themes that I do want to hear from Matt on as well. So Matt, on this theme, because we have had cannabis consultants on Lunch and Learn before. And so Matt, first you, and then back to Lucas. One of the things that I've always asked similar businesses to talk about, and when I say similar, again, I've had other cannabis consultants on, I've had software people on, I've had IT infrastructure folks on. So Matt, first you, then Lucas. What is it that the new operator should look for when they're trying to choose that service person or that service company, right? There's more than one point of sale system out there. There's more than one cannabis consultant out there. And we always want to make sure that our members, that people in the industry make sound decisions. So Matt, if you first, if you could absolutely share, what is it that somebody should be looking for when they go for point of sale? And then Lucas, what should somebody look for? What should they be asking a potential cannabis consultant? First, Matt.
Thanks, Edmund. It's, I think that question can be made even more broad and still have the same answer. And I think what I tend to recommend to folks when they're entering a new space or when they're entering a new market, so like maybe they've done cannabis in Colorado, but they're thinking about New Jersey, That is, find partners that look at the problem uniquely each time and try to help you solve for those sets of problems. I think a lot of times you'll work with software technology that thinks that they have a very singular approach to solving the problem. And I can tell you in cannabis that does not work. You've got to be able to flex and bend and move in weird ways. Sometimes, in neighboring states, you have to operate certain aspects of the business very differently. So I would say look for partners who really try to figure out the problems you have to solve and are equipped to help you solve those specific challenges and not trying to apply a cookie cutter approach. I think that's one of the biggest key things. And I think the other, and this goes hand in hand with that, is look for partners who have a more vested interest in your business succeeding, and not just that they're out there, they're doing software and they're trying to figure out how to make money in the space as well. I mean, look for the kinds of partners that you feel confident are going to help you grow your business the way you want to grow it. And that they're not just looking out for themselves. And I think, look, in a lot of times software, there's lots of people that try to get into a space because they think it's exciting. They think there's a growth opportunity, and they're not necessarily looking out for you. And I think that's going to be one of the key things to look for as you're building your business. The partners you start with, those may evolve. You may figure out in year 2 that you need an additional set of partners, and you may just want to keep building that. So I think making sure you pick people that are flexible, solving the problems at hand, and really partnering with you are going to be the most important aspects. Because I'll say, if they're operating in the state, it means they have to be compliant. So you shouldn't have to look over your shoulder about those issues. If they're operating in the state, it means they already work with metric, or at least they should. So some of the basics should be out of the way, right? You should be able to count on those factors being resolved. It's what do you do after that? And so those are the things I think to look for. Make sure they think about your business as your business.
Thank you, Matt.
There you go.
Lucas.
Great. Well, I'm going to try and answer that question in a way that doesn't just highlight all the things about myself that I like or about my business. So I'm going to try and be objective about this. I think whenever speaking with anyone, it goes to the age-old adage, you just got to trust your gut. I think you kind of have to like the people you're going to be working with. In some ways, it's going to be a bit of a marriage because you're probably going to be leveraging them for a long period of time. In software, potentially a lifetime. In consulting, at least 6 to 12 months, and that's a pretty long time to work with someone you don't like. So number one, I think that's going to be very important. You have to get a sense that you're getting some value in this relationship as well. It's really difficult when you have to work with an entity that doesn't provide you with that value, and some you don't have a choice over. You have to work with the CRC as a for instance, right? It just so happens that they're seemingly nice folks. Insurance is another one. Those are ones that you sort of have to sort of pick and choose. But people have an option of working with a consultant or not. And to be honest, consultants aren't for everyone. The value of working with a consultant is that they do care for your business. They can often deploy a whole team instead of you having to hire a staff whose salary collectively would be much more than what you would ever pay for sort of a shorter relationship. And then after the goal or project is completed, you're able to part ways or continue a relationship typically. So those are a few things to sort of look out for, is making sure that you are getting that value. That when people are speaking to you, that you get that sense that they have an understanding, not just of the industry, not just of the business or what the project might look like, but also what your goals are. And I think it's very important when speaking with people that I let them speak at least 75% of the time. And I'm just sort of filling in whenever being asked a question, because, my goal when working with folks is to really get to know what their goals are. And if there's overlap with what we do, that's great. That's fantastic. I'm certainly happy to speak to, how companies such as us can really help and get involved. Yeah, again, it's going to be a partnership. So you will be involved with these people probably for long periods of time. Implementing a software solution, as for instance, I've seen how this goes in terms of implementing a point of sale system. Once you marry that with your store, it could be very difficult to move. So you have to be very confident that you've got the right solution at hand. Further to that, I think having a pool of resources that folks can pull from and knowing about those resources. Having very defined scopes of work, I think, is important. You know, what's going to be included, where do you sort of leave me off, and where do things sort of end, if at all, between us. Those understanding, I think, is very important. But yeah, I would think that folks that can share a wealth of knowledge that they've gained, you don't want to pay someone to learn. I think that's probably the most important thing with hard-earned money when you're starting a business.
That's great. In fact, Lucas, I'm glad you kind of encapsulated it in that last point, because I'm going to put you both on the spot, and I have done this with other with other guests. In fact, most recently, I had David Fentner from Grow America Builders on, and I put him on the spot. So I'm going to do this to both of you, just to be fair. So again, knowing who our audience is, and knowing who will be viewing this later on and wanting to be helpful, I'm going to ask the how much question, right? So first Matt and then Lucas. So Matt, as somebody who's possibly going to be a retailer, someone who's going to actually be planning and trying to put a budget together, what's a ballpark? So as I'm going down my list of budgetary items, what should I put in there for a POS system? What is that range that I should be looking at, so that again, if I'm thinking about doing this, maybe it's not for me? And that's a very real discussion that we have from the Canada Business Association standpoint. Maybe you're not ready for a license yet if that range scares you away. And then Lucas, I'll come back to you. What is it that someone may want to hear versus what they will actually hear? So Matt, first, that range of point of sale, and then Lucas, that range of if I need that extracurricular help.
So I'm going to split that hair just a little bit, because I think one of the things that stores may not realize is what all has to go along with that decision besides just the point of sale software. So the first thing is you need to make sure you have software that's going to help you manage customer information, customer data. So kind of a CRM of sorts, some kind of point of sale system and inventory management system. And so those are generally either one or both of those are likely available in the point of sale. However, there are other factors that you're going to have to think about, such as hardware, right? You're opening a business, you have a lot of expenses in the early days. You don't necessarily know on day one, or frankly, even 6 months in, exactly how you want to configure your operation and your flow. And so one of the things you have to think about is, what kind of flexibility do you want to build into this? Do you want to basically put in a package where you have to figure out all of your hardware for all of your stations? It's linked up to your software, et cetera. And you've got to figure out all of that on day one. That can sometimes be cost prohibitive. It can be daunting. It can take away flexibility, because if you make the wrong decision early, as Lucas had pointed out, you may be stuck with that decision for a while because it may be cost prohibitive to change. One of the things that I see is people will think, oh, POS software, not super expensive. That's great. That's going to be a key linchpin of my operation. But then they have to start going out and spending on analytics. They have to start spending on, customer engagement platforms and tools. And before you know it, you might only be spending, $1,000 to $1,500 a month per physical location for point of sale. But then you're spending a couple of thousand a month on, analytics software, and a couple thousand a month on other things. And so before you know it, it's all of the ancillary applications that start to cause things to get more and more expensive. So what you want to look for is flexibility. You want to try to, especially if you're a new business, I just highly recommend, don't get yourself locked into anything that requires custom hardware, right? If you feel like the hardware that you have to have installed on day one is the hardware you're going to be stuck with for a year, I'll tell you right now, I'm almost certain you don't know enough to know that that's the right decision, right? Whereas knowing that you can start with some inexpensive iPads And then maybe if you want to add desktop devices later, you can do that. If you want to throw laptops into the operation so that people can move around for inventory, that's a nice add. You also ideally want to look for something where it's going to help you manage the scanning and validation of IDs on the front at the front door, right? So there's another potential cost factor that may require that you go out and get an additional service. So you want to look at the entire picture of your retail operation. Think about how you're going to do the front of house part of the business from check-in to bud tender transaction. Think about the back end as well. Think about the hardware requirements and try to make sure you're making a decision that allows you to start with something and then add to it over time and kind of change it over time as you start to dial in how you want to run that business and how that retail operation needs to work. I think this is one of the things I see the most when I go out and I talk to people who've been in business for 6 months or a year and a half, is that they realize like something sounded really good when they were first opening their business. And in hindsight, they really wish they hadn't done that, right? Because they're like, I'm sort of locked into, I've got all these expensive machines now, and I've got to, like, if I replace one of them, it's going to be really expensive to replace it. And so like little things like that end up becoming kind of cost prohibitive down the line. So I think I'd say when you're evaluating a point of sale, what's the cost going to be? The cost for the POS, you're probably going to find anywhere from $500 to $2,000 a month per location, depending on which provider you look at. And we all have sort of different key strengths and opportunities that we bring to the table. But like you have to go beyond that and think about the whole retail operations package. And that, by the way, is obviously very variable. You start to add a lot of different kinds of applications into the mix. And so I would say on the low end, you're probably talking about $12,000 to $15,000 a year for the software piece, and then it's however much you want to add on to it on top of that.
So hopefully we didn't scare anyone away, but not scare them, but at least get them to make a rational decision. Thank you, Matt. That was great. Lucas, on your end.
Sure, that was great. Appreciate that, those ads there, Matt. I think that those are some great points. Okay. So right. So, I mean, when looking to set this up, I mean, I think an important aspect that consultants are going to bring, we said consultants aren't for everyone, right? But for those that are looking for advice on basically how to spend their money, those that are looking to get this done maybe quickly. And again, licensing should be done so that really anyone can apply for this. Really anyone should be able to apply, especially with the social equity component, right? We need to make sure that those that might not have the resources are able to get their name into a hat and to be considered, right? And I really think that's important. Despite that, it's an investment, but goals for a consultant really should be that, like, if you hire someone such as myself or another consultant, every dollar you're spending on me, my goal is to save you 3.5 back in terms of savings. Because, for example, there's going to be a lot of tradespeople you're working with. Security companies are another one. And when they get wind of something like cannabis that they're working on, everyone starts to think, oh, the green rush is coming. Now's my opportunity to come in and make a quick buck off these suckers. Having someone like us as a checksum really helps to keep people like that in check. So again, it's an investment with, I would say, an immediate return on investment. When we work with our clients, we prepare a lot of the plans that they're going to need. We prepare their floor plans, and then we prepare their security designs, and then we actually send those out to tender. Right. And we review those with our clients and go over them and say, like, look, this is great. This is obviously the least expensive one, but maybe they're missing A and B. And then this one with A through Z is totally overkill, and they're taking us for a ride. Choice is yours, but that's my advice. And I'm happy to make those recommendations throughout the entire process. The last thing I want to say before we get down and really dig in onto cost, because I think that's really good that people know how much this whole thing is going to cost. And I can even tell you how much your whole store is going to cost, depending on your square footage in our first call. But it's the managing expectations part. I've worked with a lot of really young folks. I've even worked with a team of folks that are in their 20s. They're actually turning 21 and very eager to apply. And it's great. But when I've spoken to them about how they want to find investors, because they're not self-funded and they don't have $1 million, I've really had to rein them in and say, like, look, you got to start from humble beginnings. They have this vision of like a Best Buy superstore where everyone's in like really cool polo t-shirts. They're walking around. It's like a Genius bar and like just this like massive 2,000 square foot store. I said, guys, it's really healthy to want things in life, but as a business, that's not how we do things. We got to start small. And they said, but the lineups, we're going to have lineups out the door. And I said, guys, that's the best problem as a small business owner you can ever have, is having your store be way too busy. You know, you want to get to that busy point before you scale up. If you build something big to grow into it, I guarantee you'll lose sleep at night if you're not going to be making payroll or lease payments every month, right? That's really something you got to consider. So humble beginnings, right? Locations are super important, and lease agreements that you have somebody look through. And at the very worst case scenario, have talked to you about building something like a parachute in that lease, like an exit clause, so that if things for some reason don't work out, cash runs out, investors dip, market changes, or you just decide this isn't for you anymore, your situation or personal life situation changes, you need a way to be able to get out of this idea too. You can't be locked in, right? So, I mean, that again, I think is highlighting some of the value that we bring in. In terms of consulting fees, you know, if we were coming in on just a very, very light touch project, you know, we'd have a retainer of $5,000 to be able to get started with folks. If they're looking for something turnkey, that can go up to $30,000 to $40,000 with hitting benchmarks along the way. So we're not like, you know, cut us a check at the beginning. If you see success in us and what we're producing for you, and you see those results and you see what we're saving, you're welcome to continue with us. And if not, we never lock anybody in. In terms of what people should have in their pocket when starting a store, it's a great question. Once we see these numbers, I think you'll see why we try to get people to sort of build small, right? 300 square feet is pretty good for a small business to start off with. You know, it's great to have that vision, but we also got to be realistic for what the market's going to be able to sustain. And the other part to that too is that things aren't always going to be sunny days. In emerging markets, we'll see a boom. The boom is going to be because there are very, very few licenses out, very, very few competitors that have moved into your neighborhood, and there's going to be an undersupply of product, which will mean the products that you do have will go for a premium. And, you know, we've seen stores, not to be too bullish on this, make $1 to $3 million a month in revenue. You know, if they got the right location in a busy area, they will have those lineups. But the part that they don't tell you is once the cultivators do begin to pick up in terms of licenses, typically markets lead into an oversupply. It's just natural. It moves in a wave. It always does. Is you also have to be prepared for when things aren't going so well. And that means pulling back on the reins again and not scaling too quickly and getting that 2,000 square foot store. So build a 5-year plan that really makes sense for what the market's actually going to react to. Okay. So once you've made your first, you know, tens of millions of dollars in the first couple of years, maybe just wait for that rainy day to come. Okay. In terms of capital that you should have, typically we recommend, you know, if you're looking for funding, probably get as much as you can, right? Within reason, right? Get as much as you can, but you want to have a couple $100,000. I'd say about $250,000 to $300,000 from end to end is probably what you're going to need. Doesn't mean you have to do it all at once, but you do need to have access to that capital, and you will have a burn period while you're waiting for everything to be ready. And for that revenue to come back in. So, you know, again, my job as a consultant is to make sure we get to your first buck as quickly as possible.
Great stuff. Lucas, thank you so much. So gentlemen, as we prepare to wind down the program, and I'll ask you for your closing remarks, I will once again thank our sponsors. I'd like to thank Proteus 420, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Sachs LLP, Burton Trent Public Affairs, Curaleaf, Garden State Green Energy, Dutchy, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, Sprague Energy, our preferred energy partner, and the Sheet Metal Workers Local 19. So Matt Tharp of Flow Hub, thank you so much for being with us. Lucas of CanDelta, thank you. Matt, closing thoughts, closing remarks.
This is exciting. Is more so than it is daunting, I hope, for everybody. It really, as we've said, there are lots of challenges. There are lots of changes that you have to be prepared for. You got to be nimble. But it's also still early time in an industry. And so the vast majority of people that are in this space right now are in it because they have a passion for it. And so keep in mind, there's a lot of camaraderie. There's a lot of people willing to share experience and try to help each other. I think it's one of the greatest things about this industry right now is there's not a lot of adversarial relationships. Everybody is kind of working together and trying to make this work. So keep that in mind. You've got resources like your software providers, like folks like at FlowHub, folks like Lucas, and then obviously there are lots of great resources, especially in things like in New Jersey, where honestly this is really buttoned up and well organized compared to a lot of states. So like take full advantage. I think you've got a lot of resources available to you.
Thank you, Matt Tharp of FlowHub, Lucas McCann of Can Delta.
Sure. I'd like to leave everyone on a note of optimism. Starting a new business is definitely climbing a mountain, to Matt's point. But it's important to be reminded, I think, that the framework that New Jersey is building with their social equity component, supporting diversity-owned businesses and those operating businesses in impact zones, there's such a strong element of good that this is looking to do. There was the announcement of the SEEF, the SEEF, which is the Social Equity Fund, which is amazing that this is something that's actually going to help funnel cash into social programs and those living in impact zones. Very, very exciting that that's going to be something that's going to help to not just sustain the industry, but also to help to fund additional programs that are coming from that. There's a lot of very exciting information that came out of the last meeting on February 8th. I think the time that we're at now is way more exciting than it was even a year ago, because we are about to see this industry really pick up, and it's really going to start booming in the next little while. For those that need to be reminded, we're expecting announcements on February 22nd for the other license types that are not currently open. That includes the distributor licenses. We're expecting announcements on consumption lounges and what that framework is going to look like specifically. We are removing the license caps on the number of cannabis cultivators. Okay, so that announcement came in the meeting, the publicly held meeting by the CRC, because the amount of cultivators per capita is way too low. So we're going to start to see a number of folks come into the production side of New Jersey cannabis. The ban on vertical integration is set for February 22nd, so folks can be Class 1, Class 2, Class 5 license holders. Again, very exciting. But most importantly now is that the public has really spoken to the CRC. They've mentioned that despite the fact that some of these applications are being prioritized for social equity applicants, diversity owned businesses, or those living in impact zones, that there's still a big gap. And the CRC has listened to that, and they've announced now a cannabis grant that's going to be available to be renamed. They said the name's very lackluster, but it's up to 6 figures available to holders of a conditional license that will qualify. This is really going to allow those folks to be able to move from dream to reality, who are in those social equity groups, who are license holders for a conditional license. I think that's the most exciting. I think there's a lot of optimism to have in the industry right now. And if you have any questions or love to chat about it, I'd love to continue the conversation with anyone outside of this Lunch and Learn. And yeah, I really appreciate the time, Edmund. Today really flew by.
Thank you so much, Lucas. So, gentlemen, in the meantime, as I close, put your contact information in the chat feature so those that are here can email you. I'd appreciate that. Just as a couple of reminders, I'm Ed DeVoe, president of the New Jersey Cannabis Association. On March 3rd, it's interesting, the CRC will be our guest. We've got a great relationship. The NJCBA has got a great relationship. It's not the first time that Executive Director Jeff Brown and other staff members have been with us. So absolutely check us out that Friday for Lunch and Learn, Friday, March 3rd. The CRC are our expected guests. Just will also want to highlight again, February 28th, our next business-to-business networking event in Voorhees with our one of our law partners, Archer Law. So we'll be in Voorhees on February 28th. Big event, April 12th. Be sure to mark that down. We'll be covering these topics and more, helping you get your cannabis businesses together. So once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Join us at our next Lunch and Learn. If you're not a member of the New Jersey Cannabis Association, you probably should be. Then you'd be getting newsletters and you would be finding out what the CRC is doing, what the NJEDA, the Economic Development Authority, is doing. So we look forward to hearing from everyone. Again, Matt Tharp of Flow Hub, Point of Sale System, thank you so much. Lucas McCann of Can Delta, Canna Advisors, thanks so much. Thank you all for being with us. Have a great President's Day weekend. Hopefully you have Monday off. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Guys, thank you so much.
That was fun. Great
It's a
moderation.
pleasure.
Thank you.